guys, Erin here, back with another moon update for you. I'm going to be talking about the lunar eclipse we have coming up here on Saturday, October 28th. Now, anytime that we have a lunar eclipse, we have to be having a full moon. Of course, we have a full moon every month, but what makes a lunar eclipse unique to the average full moon is it means either the north or the south node is right next to the full moon. Okay, this is the north node that's right next to the full moon. Very, very powerful energy coming in. Okay, now the full moon peaks at 1:24 p.m. Pacific time, and this really all takes place at 5 degrees Taurus. This is a very, very intense combination of energies that we're going to be receiving. And so in this recording, I will pull up the chart. We're going to go through all of the prominent astrological forces that we will be receiving at the time of this full moon. But really, this is also, even though it's an eclipse, it's still a peak of a growth cycle. Okay, a growth cycle that began approximately 6 months ago when we had a new moon in the sign of Taurus. Now, this is the full moon in the sign of Taurus. We've all been experiencing this opportunity for growth that's related to this sign of Taurus. And this is a time to honor this growth. This is a time to look back and think, how have I grown in these ways that are, related to this sign of Taurus? This is also a time, as soon as this moon begins to wane, so if it peaks at 1:24 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday, October 28th, by 1:25, the moon's starting to wane, get smaller. And so if we want to stay in the natural flow of things, that's when we can let go of any of this Taurus energy we may have picked up on that is not serving us. So of course, in this video, I will also break down this sign of Taurus for you so you know what you're working with here. Now, I also want to mention this, for those of you who are a little more advanced, it is very beneficial if you can look to see which area of your life this full moon is beaming through. Okay, which house in your natal chart does the sign of Taurus rule? Now, I want to mention this, when it comes to these lunar transits, I personally really like working with the whole sign house system. I think Placidus has its use. I think Regiomontanus definitely has. All these house systems can have their own, beneficial uses. But for these lunar transits, if you can, if you're using software or a website or whatever, flip the settings into whole sign house system and see which house in your natal chart this sign of Taurus rules. It could be coming through your house of career, your house of relationships, your house of communication. If you're a Taurus rising, coming through your house of self, could be coming through your house of karma, all these different areas of your life that it could be coming through. Okay. Now, also, do you have anything in your natal chart near 4 degrees Taurus, or maybe opposing that? 5 degrees Taurus, or maybe opposing that at 5 degrees Scorpio, or maybe squaring it at 5 degrees Leo or Aquarius, or maybe trining it at 5 degrees Virgo or Capricorn. Okay, there's all sorts of little tricks we can learn. Of course, if this is all too much for you, I totally get it. Not everybody's got time to sit down and study astrology, right? But if you do, I highly encourage you to, because it's a major game changer, okay? Especially once you really start to understand the way it works. It really, really is a big game changer. But if that's too much for you, that's perfectly okay. We just take a step back and focus on this sign of Taurus in and of itself. Focus on this transit in and of itself. I will say this, though. It is difficult to interpret the energies of any astrological transit on how we really experience it as a collective, because we all do experience it so incredibly uniquely. Okay. But of course, I do the best I can. And again, if you've never seen your natal chart before, go to any search engine and type in free natal chart calculation. You'll get a million things that popped up. There's astro.com, astroseek.com. There's all different websites you can use that will do this for free. Okay, you can also, there's an app you can download into your phone. It's called Time Passages. They'll allow you to calculate your natal chart for free. And then anytime you're watching any astrology video, you can look at your natal chart and go, oh, geez, okay, she's talking about 5 degrees Taurus. What, I see the sign of Taurus in my chart, and I see something that got near 5 degrees Taurus. Wow, this must be heavy for me. Okay, so there's that. Now, also in this video, I'm going to be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Taurus, because these parts of our body become more sensitive anytime the moon transits through the sign of Taurus, but especially when it's a full moon / lunar eclipse in the sign of Taurus. So I will also be talking about some overall herbal remedies to help support our bodies through this transit. And I'll also be bringing up some gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Taurus. Now, what I've been doing every single full moon since 2016 is pulling out my journal, writing down the growth that I'm grateful for. That's, again, related to the sign the moon's transiting through, and also writing down what I want to let go of. And of course, I know how to apply this into my own natal chart. So just for an example here, okay, I am grateful for the growth that I've experienced that is related to this sign of Taurus. I'm grateful for the abundance of material things. We'll get into this, okay? And then I apply it to the area of my life that it comes through. Oh, okay, it's coming through my house of being of service. Oh, okay, so I've obtained these material things through being of service, and I'm grateful for that. Okay, that's kind of an example. And not only that, but what I like to do is take the gemstones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through and put them on top of my journal. I put that journal up on a windowsill so that when the moon transits by, it's like the words that I have spelled out, the spells that I am casting are now making a stronger connection with those luminaries. Now, I also want to mention this as well. Please do not feel sad in any way, shape, or form if you don't have any of the crystals that are on the list of, because I always leave a full extensive list of gemstones that resonate well with the sign the moon's transiting through in the description below. And if you don't have any of those, that's perfectly okay. You just work with what you've got. Specifically, if in case I lose you before I get to the crystals, it is a good idea to have some kind of a protective stone. Generally speaking, the darker stones are going to be a little more protective. The clear stones are going to be more amplifying. If you want to use both, that might be beneficial. So there's that. Okay, so let's see, did I cover everything? Yeah, let's get rolling with this. The sign of Taurus. This is this, what we call the fixed earth sign. Okay, now when I say fixed, what I'm talking about is this energy that likes to do things like in a steadfast way, consistently. And being that it's in the element of earth, it tends to do things slowly and steadily. Okay, now that, and please do not get me wrong, doesn't mean that every single Taurus out there is doing things slowly and steadily. If they were born with their sun right next to Mars or something like that, that changes things. But the sign of Taurus in and of itself is really like the sign of steadfast, okay? Now, it is ruled by Venus, the influencer of love, okay? Now, Venus tends to be a very lovely, warm energy, and it can even, in fact, be kind of a sensual energy because that Venetian rulership. But Venus also has an influence on material things. In fact, the sign of Taurus, out of all the zodiac signs, the sign of Taurus is most strongly associated with money and material possessions. Okay. In fact, the motto for the sign of Taurus is I possess. Okay. And with that said, it's like, this is a sign, a lot of people who have their sun in Taurus, their Venus in Taurus, their Taurus rising, they will understand the value of working hard to obtain those, to earn a wealthy income so that they can possess material things, so that they, they understand the value of living a little more comfortably because you've worked so hard to earn money to be able to buy these things. Okay. And there's nothing, I'll just give my own little story out here. I have absolutely zero Taurus in my own natal chart. Okay. And I grew up most of my life, I'm talking about up into my early 30s, thinking to myself, I just want to learn to live without money. Like I wouldn't just live off the land. I just want to live without money. And I kind of manifested myself broke. But it's so interesting because for those of you who understand what progressions are, solar arc progressions, secondary progressions, as soon as a bunch of my planets, mostly my sun, but the other things started joining, progressing into the sign of Taurus, it was like, boom, all of a sudden I was like, you know what? If I work hard in doing something that I love and that I have value in, that I actually value, obviously I value astrology and I value my clients, I value teaching astrology. Okay. Then all of a sudden, the value of material things I just had a stronger connection with working hard to obtain these material possessions. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that every single person who's a Taurus is out there working hard. In fact, some people have their sun in Taurus or their Venus in Taurus, and it's really well aspected and they've got all kinds of fortunate things around it. These people will sometimes just be lucky enough to have these material possessions come their way. They just, they were born into money or something like that. Of course, there's other things in the natal chart that can trigger that as well. But this sign of Taurus, these Taurus people tend to value to be able to live comfortably. And if we take this back into ancient times, it's like, this is the time or the Taurus energy will be associated with like being out in the fields and working hard so that you can go home and have your comfortable, your meal, working out on the farm and that sort of thing so that you can have your meal with your family. In fact, the sign of Taurus, I'll just give you a little hint now, the sign of Taurus rules this part of the body, okay? It rules even the taste buds. And this sign of Taurus is associated with food, as in like eating food, okay? The sign of Taurus, a lot of people who've got a heavy dose of Taurus energy in their natal chart will understand the value of nourishing your body with things that, make your taste buds do wonder. And I'm talking about healthy food, okay? Of course, there's some people out there who've got a lot of Taurus energy in their natal chart and they enjoy eating processed sugary foods, which is not good for us at all. But this sign, like the real root of this sign of Taurus, understands the value of quality food. Okay, so also this sign of Taurus is represented by the bull. Okay, the bull that doesn't want to budge. The bull this is again all the fixed signs, Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo, can all have this tendency to be a little bit stubborn. They don't like to be moving all over the place. It doesn't mean that everybody who has their sun in a fixed sign is going to be super stubborn at all, because there's so much more to the natal chart. But these fixed signs in and of themselves, they don't like to be having to adapt into new things all the time. Okay. They like things to be done with consistency and persistency. And that's the bull that doesn't want to budge. It's a very strong energies. Taurus people can have really good vitality. And the reason for that is they can hold the energy in. A lot of the other zodiac signs, energy's flying all over the place. And so they overexert themselves, they drain themselves because the energy's going all over. But Taurus holds the energy in. Okay, it's a very, very strong sign. I will say this right off the bat too, though. There's been a lot of very bizarre things going on in the sign of Taurus. Kind of mostly started around 2018 when Uranus moved into a Taurus, because Uranus influences spasmodic changes, like revolutionary, like what the heck is going on kind of energy. And so a lot of people who say have their sun in Taurus or their Taurus rising, but there's all sorts of things that can trigger this. But you've got a lot of Taurus energy in your natal chart and you like things to be done in a steadfast way with consistency and you don't want to be moving all over the place. However, if you've had Uranus hitting your chart really hard, you've been having to go through some very, very abrupt changes. Not only that, but we've had quite a few eclipses in the sign of Taurus over the last year and a half. And I believe this is the last eclipse that we will have in the sign of Taurus for another 9 years. Okay, so again, this is a time to be thinking about how have you grown in these ways? Have you check in with your value system? What do you value? And do you treat it well? That sort of thing. Again, this Venetian energy can have a lot to do with caring for something that you materially possess, or maybe even check in with, what you've been consuming. Again, this sign of Taurus can have a lot to do with consuming, as in like being a buyer that buys things that they're going to value, but also consuming what's going into the body. Okay, so it's a time to be thinking about how have you grown in these ways? How are you doing with your stability? Okay, I know a lot of people are probably having a hard time with stability these days, but this might be a good time to be thinking about this. Okay, have I been doing this step by step by step? Have I been consistent with my goals? Have I been trying to stick to the program here? Okay, and if you have, this is really a good time to be honoring yourself for that. And maybe, for some people, maybe you become a little too materialistic. I actually just had a reading with a client who's by nature a very, very spiritually tapped in person, very spiritual person. But his main, thing that he's experiencing right now is he's worked really hard and obtained a lot of really nice things, very, very expensive things. And he's found himself, I've always been telling him, you got to find a healthy balance between the spirituality and the materialism, and that's been a big problem for him as of late, is kind of like, but I love this $10 million home. And if that's the case, if you maybe feel yourself becoming a little too attached to material things, as soon as this moon begins to wane, it's a good time to let go of that. And another thing, check in with your own, ability for sensuality. The stable earth sign could be really good for that. It's a very, very magnetic energy. People tend to be drawn to the sign of Taurus. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart here and we'll start going through some of these. I mean, this is intense, man. This is a very, very powerful transit. And I will explain to you why. So for those of you who are new to my recordings, what I work with is geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, what we're looking at here is basically a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this full moon. Okay, we put Earth right here in the middle of the thing because we're working with geocentric. These guys right here are basically the celestial bodies. Okay, like here's the sun, here's Mercury, here's Mars, over here is Pluto, over here is Saturn, over here is Neptune. Okay, when we go in the wheel just a little ways, these things are the symbols or the glyphs for the zodiac signs that these things will all be beaming through onto us at the time of this full moon. Okay, now let me just point this out really quick. This is based on my location. Okay, so let's start with the moon. This right here is the symbol for the moon. This right here is the glyph for the sign of Taurus. For everybody on Earth, the moon will be at 5 degrees Taurus right here. Okay, but for some people, depending on your location, if you're over on the East Coast, the moon's going to be somewhere over here. If you're over in the UK, the moon's going to be up here somewhere. So, but everything, it will stay in the same degree and in the same zodiac sign, but depending on your location, the zodiac will turn. Okay, so again, there's the symbol for the moon, for the sign of Taurus. Since this is at 5 degrees Taurus, we're in the first decan of this energy. So this is very powerful energy. Not only that, but this is where the moon exalts. Okay, this is where she works with her greatest strength. Now, really, the reason for that, well, there's a lot of reasons for it, calculate through math, we can figure out. But this moon, in and of herself, she rules our emotions. Okay, now the sign of Taurus being the sign of calmness and patience, a lot of people who were born, like when you took your first breath of air, if the moon was in the sign of Taurus, most of you will have kind of a like calmer sense of emotions and not, get super dramatic with the emotions. Of course, there's things that can counteract that. And especially if you're experiencing like a heavy transit that's hitting that part of your chart. But that's why the moon, she just tends to love to be in the sign of Taurus because she can be a little more calm in that energy. However, this is not calm. This is not a calm transit. Right off the bat, let's mention this. This right here is the North Node. That will be, even though it's the North Node is in the sign of Aries, okay? This right here, this is Aries. This right here is Taurus. They're different zodiac signs, but the North Node is still close enough to the moon while she's in her fullest form to make this a lunar eclipse. That North Node is what makes this an eclipse, okay? Now that North Node is the dragon's head, okay? Ferocious energy comes through the North Node. It's wonderful, but on the same token, it's heavy. It's literally the dragon's head, especially through the sign of Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars, which some of you may have heard Mars being referred to as the planet of war. Okay, Aries is an aggressive energy because it's ruled by Mars. No, that doesn't mean everybody who's in Aries is going to be aggressive, but the sign of Aries in and of itself is aggressive. And when we've got the dragon's head going through the sign of Aries all the way until January of 2025, that is a very, very strong energy, okay? Especially next to Luna when she's in her fullest form in the zodiac sign that she works with her greatest strength in. And not only that, but we've also got Jupiter pretty darn close to the moon here. And so Jupiter, he's the great expander, okay? Jupiter, he kind of will just make things a bigger energy, okay? And just hours after this full moon peaks, the moon's going to transit right on over Jupiter. So this is very, very powerful energy. Moreover, let's head on up here. This all is Scorpio energy. On October 23rd, the sun moves into the sign of Scorpio. We've already had Mars in the sign of Scorpio and Mercury in the sign of Scorpio. All right, so let's put some emphasis on this. Sign of Scorpio. This is the most intense sign of the zodiac. If you watched my Libra recording last month, whenever it was, we talked about how Libra represents when the sun is setting, okay? That lovely energy, the sign of balance, right as the sun is setting. Well, Scorpio comes right after Libra. This is when the sun goes under Earth, okay? Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Mars, while Pluto is the ruler of the underworld. Pluto is Hades in Greek mythology, okay? So and not only that, but so Scorpio, again, ruled by Pluto and Mars. In ancient astrology, it's only ruled by Mars, and modern astrology is ruled by Pluto. in my opinion, I can clearly see why it's ruled by both, because Pluto rules our psyche. Okay, Pluto rules our spiritual willpower. And that sign of Scorpio has incredible spiritual willpower. It's like this one of the strongest signs, maybe even debatably the strongest sign of the zodiac. Also taking the Mars has rulership over the sign of Scorpio. Mars rules our physical drive. Okay, this sign of Scorpio is very, very powerful. There's a reason why it's first of all that Halloween is during Scorpio season. Okay, this is a sign of death and rebirth. Okay, now not only that, but there's a reason why the scorpion is most commonly, represented, or the representative of the sign of Scorpio is most commonly the scorpion with a lethal pinch. Okay, that scorpion that can have a lethal pinch. Now, I'm not suggesting by any means that everybody who's their sun in Scorpio is going to have a lethal pinch, but a lot of times, especially if you're like a double Scorpio, it depends on what that double is coming through. But a lot of people have got a couple different things in the sign of Scorpio, or just their sun in Scorpio or their moon in Scorpio, can be very intense people. Okay. And I actually vibe very, very well with the sign of Scorpio. Definitely one of my favorite signs of the zodiac, because this sign is psychic. This sign sees through people. Okay. So we've got the sun shining his bright light through this intense sign of Scorpio, and during a full moon lunar eclipse. And we've got Mercury here. Mercury is basically has rulership over our mental function and our communication skills. So when Mercury's in Scorpio, these things are working intensely. Even our nervous system is a little intense when Mercury's going through Scorpio. And then we look at this, Mars is right next to Mercury. Mercury does not like Mars being close to him. Okay. Mercury does, because Mars is red, hot, fiery, frustrating energy. Don't get me wrong. Mars is wonderful. Mars rules our muscles, our adrenal glands. Like Mars is what makes us go do what we got to do. And so obviously we need Mars, and he works powerfully in the sign of Scorpio. I mean, like on fire powerfully in the sign of Scorpio. But then right next to what's rules of our nervous system, woohoo, that's very, very intense energy. Now I've got to point this out. So this eclipse is on a Saturday, the Saturday before Halloween. And I know many, many people are going to be out there partying. Okay. And there's nothing, I don't have anything against that, especially since this eclipse is at 1:24 p.m. Pacific time. So let's see, that would be 1 to 2, 3, 4. So 4:30, around 4:30 Eastern time. I would just refrain from being out partying at the time of the eclipse. I would at least wait a couple hours till after the eclipse occurs, or at least the full moon occurs. And if not, if you do want to be, I mean, it could be a great time for having fun with your friends. And it's like kind of this intense sort of scorpionic, almost like it's a few days before Halloween. There's a lot of, in fact, the sign of Scorpio, there's other zodiac signs that are associated with sexual energy, but the sign of Scorpio actually rules the genitalia. The sign of Scorpio is very strongly associated with sexual energy, and there could be a lot of that going on, but be very, very mindful with your energy. Be very, very careful with yourselves. And especially if you're taking in any kind of alcohol or some sort of mind altering substance, because this energy is powerful. Okay. I'm almost thinking about people, oh, please don't drink and drive on this evening. Oh my goodness. Or even the night before, not a good time. This Friday and Saturday are not good times to be putting yourself in a risky position. Okay. Because of all this intensity. Now, don't get me wrong. I love this. I love this energy, but I also know that it can make some people, okay, let's be clear. In your natal chart, let's say you've got something near or in between, say 3 degrees Scorpio and 14 degrees Scorpio. If you have something prominent in your natal chart, Mars, Mercury, especially Mars, woo, or your sun between those degrees of Scorpio, all three of these guys, the sun, ferocious Mars, and Mercury, nervous system, mental function, all up in your biz. Okay. And it can make it very intense. You might be feeling extra psychic. You might be called to study, like go into occult studies. That's another thing I love about the sign of Scorpio is these people tend to be very drawn into like research, especially like understanding metaphysics and just the unseen forces. The sign of Scorpio it tends to be very drawn to that kind of energy. So I love this stuff, but at the same time, I also understand it can be a little bit of a dangerous time for some people. Okay, and not only that, but here's the South Node. That's what drains energy out. Okay, so that's still fairly close to the sun as well. So that just kind of increases the need to stay a little extra safe, okay? Especially the days and especially the hours surrounding this transit. But again, it could be a really wonderful time. If you're somebody who loves to go into, studying things like esoteric books and that sort of thing, this could be a really good time to do that. Okay, so let's see here. Let's talk about Venus. Here's Venus up here. Poor little lonely Venus is all by herself in Virgo, which is not her favorite place to be. So Venus, kind of an important key player for this transit because again, Venus rules the sign of Taurus. The full moon is in the sign of Taurus. So Venus she's got a little extra strength going on here. However, she's debilitated in the sign of Virgo because Venus wants to be romantic and sensual and lovely. Okay. Venus is all about relationships, like the feminine energy that comes from a relationship, the sensuality that comes from a relationship. Venus has a lot to do with beauty and art. The sign of Virgo likes to pay attention to detail. It's the sign of perfectionism. In fact, it's represented by the Virgin. This is in part why Venus struggles in the sign of Virgo. Now, please do not get me wrong. If you, in your natal chart, if you have Venus in Virgo, chances are you like to be of service to, your partner. You could be a very authentically, very caring person. That sign of Virgo has a very sweet energy to it. But you also might be a little bit picky when it comes to connecting with another partner romantically, because that sign of Virgo could be like that. Okay, but it's also, again, there's always going to be pros and cons to everything in astrology. Every zodiac sign, every house, every aspect, everything. You're going to be able to find pros and cons to. Okay, but Venus is also, she's kind of like extra, I'm going to say she's a little bit extra uncomfortable right now for this transit because, so this right here is Uranus, which is going through the sign of Taurus. I think I mentioned this. Uranus is bringing these like abrupt changes to the sign of Taurus. That's what Uranus' job is. Uranus rules like electricity. Uranus is zappy. And that's why the sign of Taurus doesn't like Uranus going through it, because Taurus wants to be steady and strong. But Uranus comes in as like, just no, we need to abrupt changes, out with the old, in with the new, quickly. Okay. And here's a trine going between Venus and Uranus. What I'm talking about is this blue line right here, which, yes, trines are a lovely aspect. Okay. Trines, they're harmonious, really. But we've got this kind of like spasmodic, we've got two debilitated, we'll call them planets. We've got Uranus is debilitated in Taurus, Venus is debilitated in Virgo, and they're trying to harmonize together. Again, everything is going to be so unique as to how it manifests for you specifically. For an example, if you have your sun near 18 degrees Virgo, there's probably extra beauty in your life right now. Like Venus might even be bringing some think that's lovely in some way, shape, or form. Venus might be bringing that kind of energy right now if your sun is near 18 degrees Virgo, but it might be coming in kind of abruptly because Venus is harmonizing with Uranus and Taurus. Okay, so there's that. Now let's touch on Saturn down here, 0 degrees Pisces. So Saturn's job is to bring the discipline and the responsibilities. Saturn is rigid, okay? And the sign of Pisces is not. Pisces is not rigid. Pisces is a sign of like oneness and mysticism and spirituality. So Saturn overall struggles in the sign of Pisces. He entered into Pisces in March of this year, 2023, moved all the way up to 8 degrees Pisces, and then has retrograded all the way back to 0 degrees Pisces, and is still in retrograde. Saturn's in retrograde till November 4th. With that said, okay, so if you're Pisces, if your sun is in the, or like if you're Pisces who's born in February, okay, the end of February, then you very well may be experiencing some rigidness in your life, some sort, like you have to take care of this responsibility, because Saturn has moved over your sun and then retrograded back, and now he's going to move over it again. You might be having to work extra hard. There could potentially even be like some kind of a death in your life. Saturn can influence it. I'm not talking about you dying, but something, and even if it's something that's a inanimate object, your microwave died or whatever. I don't encourage anybody to ever have a microwave. Microwaves are terrible, but anything Saturn could bring an end to. That's what Saturn does. However, he's also the bringer of wisdom. Okay, that's Saturn. As long as you listen to his rules, as long as you follow through with the discipline and the responsible, whatever you got to do, Saturn can reward you with wisdom. It usually comes with a little bit of a heartache. But at the same time, Saturn can make people much wiser when we're experiencing a very prominent Saturnian transit. And as a collective here, as I've mentioned before, it's like, this sign of Pisces can almost use Saturn, because Pisces has had Neptune going through it since, 2012, I think, maybe 2011. Neptune moved into Pisces. Okay, Neptune is Pisces ruler. Neptune is what makes Pisces so flowy and mystical and dreamy. Neptune breaks down psychic boundaries. It's this this is, as I've mentioned so many times, I really do apologize if I get repetitive for people who watch my videos regularly, but this is a hyper spiritual transit, Neptune going through Pisces, and almost to the point where it can make people, I actually know a couple Pisces who Neptune went over their sun, and all of a sudden they went into like an incredible form of escapism. I'm talking like heavy doses of cannabis and psilocybin, which I actually I support the use of cannabis and psilocybin, as long as it's being done, in a wise way, where you're not using it just as a way to escape the world. Which I'm not saying, sometimes Pisces needs to escape from the world, but just, and it's becoming, when you're abusing those things, it's not good. It's not good, because we're here having this physical experience. We kind of have to, have a happy medium of both. And going off where I'm going with all this is that I feel like Saturn moving into Pisces kind of might be like, hey, get your act together. The people who are kind of going off into dreamland, kind of a little bit. It's so important that we understand. I am a very, very spiritual person by nature, always have been, always will be. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized, oh my goodness, I really can't just kind of be lost in dreamland all the time, because we're having this very physical experience, and I feel like Saturn moving into Pisces might be bringing some of that, which might be good. Okay, that was a little bit of a tangent. All right, now let's talk about Chiron briefly here. Chiron, I'm just going to say this, the same thing I say every time. Chiron is the wounded healer, okay? And there's, Chiron was only discovered in 1977, so there's not an immense amount of research on Chiron. However, I see it in people's charts. If they've got, say, Chiron right on their ascendant or something on their rising sign, they tend to be somebody who had to experience some sort of trauma, physical pain or emotional pain, some sort of psychological pain, and they had to heal from it and become healers themselves. Like, I really do see it. And that's Chiron's job. Now, Aries is the sign of self. Okay, so Chiron going through Aries is really, truly giving all of us an opportunity to heal ourselves. Now, by no means am I suggesting that you shouldn't be reaching out for any sort of guidance on your healing journey. Of course, guidance and help from others can always be beneficial. Maybe not always, but a lot of times it can be very, very beneficial. But this is more like the sign of Aries is the warrior. And we got the wounded healer going through the sign of being a warrior, going after healing yourself like a warrior. Okay, now we will briefly touch on Pluto. So Pluto finally is no longer in retrograde. Pluto is going through the sign of Capricorn, has been since all the way since 2008, and will be all the way basically until December of 2024. Okay. Pluto moved into Aquarius in 2008, been very, very slowly moving along, very briefly peaked into the sign of Aquarius earlier this year in March, and then a retrograde back into Capricorn. Pluto is the influencer of very rough things. Okay, Pluto is basically the destroyer, but what he destroys for is to create a more powerful rebirth. Just like that sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of transformation. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's ruled by Pluto. Pluto is the bringer of very slow and powerful transformation and death and rebirth. Okay. So first of all, for those of you who have anything prominent near 27 degrees Capricorn, my goodness, I can't even imagine what you have been through. It's probably your psyche, all kinds of major transformation going on in your life over these last few years. It's almost done here. But another thing I want to point out is that Pluto, you may have heard either myself or other astrologers talk about the America's Pluto return. I don't want to go too deep into this. I actually have a video on it. You can go look back in my history if you want to find that. But how Pluto is in the same spot that it was when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Okay, now this all takes place in the United States House of Money, okay, house of material possessions and money. Pluto has been creating, we're having a Pluto return, okay? Pluto, here it was when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Pluto, it took 248 years for Pluto to go around the zodiac. Then came to the same spot that it was, and then moved over it, and then retrograded back, and then moved over it again, and then retrograded back. Not to the exact minute, but Pluto, the United States natal chart shows Pluto being at 27 degrees Capricorn in the house of money, the bringer of powerful transformation, bringing almost like a death and rebirth process to, I mean, this could involve the United States debt. The whole thing is just politics, all of it, government, all of it is just so absolutely ridiculous and absurd to me. The amount of debt that the United States is supposedly in, I don't know how anybody could ever possibly recover from that. It's some sort of outrageous trillions of dollars. So something might get triggered around that, not necessarily with this full moon, but this is something to be keeping your eye on as Pluto moves forward. Let's see, I think he's going to enter into Aquarius in January of 2024 and then retrograde back into Capricorn one more time and then move forward again. So there's a lot going on with the United States, very troublesome energy going on with Pluto finishing up through this Capricorn energy. Capricorn also rules government, authoritarian positions. Capricorn even rules traditions. Capricorn season is, when there's like Christmas and holidays, that sort of thing. Pluto, I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of people are not celebrating holidays and traditions like we used to. And I'm not opposed to that. There's a reason for all this stuff to unfold. But Pluto bringing this like powerful transformation to our traditions. Okay, so there's that. I think I covered everything. If you're wondering what this little thing is behind me here, that is the law of fortune, and that's going to change very much on your location. So I'm not going to go into that. So next, let's talk about body parts. So Taurus rules, again, the throat, basically the lower jaw, the tongue, the taste buds, the vocal cords, the throat, even has some rulership on the thyroid. Okay, so all these things do become more sensitive when we experience this kind of transit. And not only that, but opposing that, all that Scorpio energy. So Scorpio does rule the genitalia, okay, but it also rules the entire excretory system. Really, all these parts of our body might be like extra hypersensitive. Now, of course, I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to offer any kind of medical advice. And it's so important to understand that we are all very, very unique from each other. So what's good for one person might not be so great for the other person. Some people might have hyperthyroid problems. Some people might have hypothyroid problems. For hypo, I have done some reading on black walnut hull. In fact, the black walnut hull could actually be a good Taurus herb, which is also very, very strong anti-parasitic. Black walnut hull can kill parasites in your body. This could be a good time for killing parasites. parasites might be crazy active within our body. And by the way, just in case you haven't heard me say this before, we all have parasites. Every single, it just blows my mind when some people are like, oh my God, I think I have a parasite. Of course you have a parasite. Everybody has a parasite. I don't care how many cleanses you've done in your life. I don't care how clean you eat. Everybody has parasites in all parts of our body. Okay. Most people even have them in their brain. Some people are going to have a lot more than others. And when we take things like black walnut hull, when we take things that are, anti-parasitic, it can help to eliminate a lot of these. Okay. And not only that, but parasites are said to be far more active, which I do believe, when it's a full moon, parasites are said to be more active. And if you think the word Luna, okay, lunatic, full moon, how many, mythological stories are there behind lunatics or, even werewolves because of the full moon, that sort of thing. Parasites become more active when we experience this kind of transit. So with this black walnut hull, but again, you might want to you just got to be really, really careful. You might want to check in with your healthcare practitioner. I'm not offering any kind of medical advice, but that black walnut hull could be helpful for somebody who has hypothyroidism. But if you got hyperthyroidism, you might want to be a little bit careful with taking black walnut hull. Okay, so there's that. As a collective, I think what's probably wisest to go with here, it's just something to, maybe loosen up your vocal cords, even just like some warm honey with lemon in it, something like that to help support this area of our body. But moreover, since it's an eclipse, adaptogenic herbs. Okay. Tulsi, as in holy basil, you can buy that in a tea form at pretty much any store, preferably some kind of a organic, health food store type of tea. Or you can even order it online. Tulsi, Tulsi. I grow it myself. It's fantastic. And it's powerful, but it's also gentle. And it basically just helps our bodies adapt. Another one that's even more powerful that I love, most people don't seem to like the flavor of it, but something called Gynostema tea from, I really like, what is it? Dragon Herbs, Ron Tea Gardens. Is it Dragon Herbs? Yeah, Dragon Herbs, Gynostema tea. It's got an interesting flavor to it, but boy, oh boy, that's a really, really strong, yet at the same time gentle adaptogen to help us when we have any kind of an eclipse. Basically, what happens is energy's coming in. It's very, very strong. Energy's coming in. And then all of a sudden we have the eclipse and the energy's shut off. It's like you put your hand, if somebody's holding a flashlight right here, and then all of a sudden puts blocks the light. Well, then as soon as they take their hand off the light, if that's shining at your face, it's, very, very abrupt to your eyes. Okay. So eclipses are like that. And it's kind of, I know people who have hurt themselves, teachers who have hurt themselves by administering for their own self, administering, even just like tinctures at the moment of an eclipse. Okay. It's just not, in fact, a lot of our ancestors, the Hopi, a lot of cultures out there would fast on the day of an eclipse. And a lot of them would hide, not necessarily hide, but just go inside caves, okay, to block themselves from this. It probably depends a little bit on what kind of eclipse it is. But also some of them they even cover up their food, make sure their water's covered up, that sort of thing. Also, some of them would even go out and smash pots together. Now, originally I heard that they were smashing pots to try and scare off the demon or scare off because this is dragon energy eclipse. Anytime we have eclipse, it's the dragon's head and the dragon's tail that are right next to the sun and the moon. Depends on what kind of eclipse it is, but it's always going to be dragon energy when we have an eclipse. Okay. Again, you can go back and I think I've even got a video that's on the lunar nodes. You can learn more about that stuff if you're really curious. But, so this dragon energy, where is it? Oh, to break in the pots to try and scare off the dragon energy. But then later, through Judith Hill, I learned, and she's really, really, really done her homework. My goodness. I wish I could take everything that's in her brain and just put it in mine. But what she taught me is that they're breaking the pots because they know that the eclipse is going to make something break, whether it be something in our body, something around our body, something, even emotionally, breakage there somehow. Okay, so they would break the pots to try and make it so that, okay, that broke. Okay, universe, we don't need to break anything else. We broke the pot. Okay, so there's that. I also know, like, wearing some kind of protective stone. We'll go into gemstones now. Wearing some kind of protective gemstone. This is so strange because I've taught this to other people, hearing stories from clients about how they will wear some sort of a protective gemstone, whether at a ring or just put it in their pocket, or a pendant or whatever. And protective stones are generally, there's a lot more to this, but for the most part, the darker stones or like an earth tone is going to be protective. There's other protective stones, but those ones you're kind of going the safe route. If you just get a darker stone, malachite is great. I'm going to talk about malachite in a minute here, but their jewelry or whatever it was, either the stone would go missing, pop out of the ring or whatever it is, just before an eclipse. And they said, but they felt with confidence that it was the jewelry that broke rather than something on them. Turquoise is a really, really good one for that. Interrupts the breakage that could be, something that's more detrimental to your physical body. Okay, so that happened to me. That just recently happened. I'm devastated because I loved this turquoise ring. And I actually had 2 turquoise rings break. And now that I think about it, I bet you that first one broke somewhere near last year's eclipse. One of them, the actual brand broke. And then another one just before this last eclipse we just had a couple weeks ago, the stone fell out and I can't find it anywhere. But I told myself, you know what? That's probably keeping me protected. Okay, so there's that. Now, gemstones that specifically resonate well with the sign of Taurus. And I don't want anybody to get all wrapped up in like, oh my God, I have to have the perfect gemstones. Of course, it's wonderful and fun to collect gemstones, but don't get too wrapped up in that. Just mostly if you're new to this stuff, I do encourage you to have one that's protective and one that's amplifying. The clearer stones are going to amplify, the darker stones are going to protect for the most part. Okay. You can always do a little research on your own. There's the Encyclopedia of Crystals by Judy Hall is a really very, very informative book. Goes into the metaphysics behind crystals, the structure behind crystals, and where they come from, all kinds of neat things. Okay, but the specific dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Taurus is emerald. Now, this kind of trips me up because emerald in the Upaya system actually belongs to Mercury. Okay. And Mercury, okay, so emerald, especially green emerald, is Mercury's stone. Well, Mercury is very, very strongly associated with Thoth, sometimes pronounced Thoth. I don't know the exact pronunciation, the Egyptian god. Mercury is basically Thoth, okay? Mercury is also a Hermes in Greek mythology. Mercury is also Odin in Norse mythology. But overall, so Thoth, it is said that he is the author of the Emerald Tablets. Okay, so that emerald really, in my very strong opinion, really does belong to Mercury. And emerald and Mercury does not rule Taurus, so it kind of trips me up a little bit. I'm not exactly sure why emerald is Taurus's birthstone, but I didn't make the rules here. So, but emeralds can be fantastic for some people. I don't have a real true green emerald, and boy, I do hope to get one someday. They are expensive. If you notice, I do have a lot of gemstones. All the gemstones I have are all very affordable. There's nothing too crazy, unless it's something I inherited from family. But emeralds are very strong and can be excellent for bringing mental clarity for people. But for some people, it might overdrive your nervous system. Okay. Again, Mercury rules the nervous system. So something that is a little more affordable, and also B, kind of a little bit like taking the safer route is, oh boy, I just said it a minute ago. Oh gosh, it's going to come to me. Bear with me. Malachite. Oh my goodness. Okay. Malachite, this green stone this is like one, if you're going to buy yourself, say you saved up, you're going to get yourself your first, stone, or it's your 10th stone or whatever it is. Malachite, you might want to add that to the list. It's again, affordable, especially if you get it raw. It doesn't have to be all shiny and polished like this. can be very, very good for the nervous system. And this one is very, very protective. This is one of the top recommended stones from Edgar Cayce. Could be great for the nervous system, all sorts of things. I kind of want a piece of malachite jewelry. I don't have that yet, but I do have this, and I love it. I love the feeling of it. I love the, like when I'm really meditating on it, and the color and the swirls are just absolutely fabulous. Okay, so there's that. But also, what really resonates well with the sign of Taurus is jade. So I brought out this jade elephant. This is, again, nothing so many of these things I did not buy for myself. They're gifts I either barter with people or whatever. This was a gift from my neighbor, and it's a jade elephant. In fact, I think it's actually jade combined with something else, but jade really resonates very well with the sign of Taurus. And now that I think about it, I just had a Taurus friend tell me she just bought a piece of jade, which is fantastic. I didn't put the two and two together. Jade can bring luck, can bring protection. Jade is an excellent stone that comes in so many different colors. And a lot of jades you'll find are blended in with other stones. I forget what that one's blended in with, but anywho, jade is absolutely another stone that's fantastic, especially if it's something that you're just adding to your collection. I don't know that I would necessarily choose jade as the first stone. Maybe it just depends. It depends on your own natal chart, depends on your intuition. But jade overall is an excellent stone to have. Okay, now the next one, you guys have probably seen me talk about this like 100 times over the past couple of years here, because we've had all these crazy powerful eclipses. Okay, this is black kyanite, which is very, very protective, resonates very well with the sign of Taurus and the sign of Scorpio. Okay, so remember, we got all that scorpionic energy going on. Very, very protective stone. And then the last one I'm going to mention here, this is carnelian, which carnelian is absolutely gorgeous. Carnelian can be really good for working through sexual trauma, okay, or any kind of like sexual energy blockages, that sort of thing. Carnelian could be really, really good for that. Again, if you think about all that Scorpio energy that's coming through, again, so carnelian resonates very well with the sign of Taurus, but also very well with the sign of Scorpio. So if that's something you're trying to work through, some sort of like, sexual trauma or sexual energy overall, carnelian. In fact, I have a carnelian pendant I should have brought out it's almost, I forget what it's called, but you can almost see through it. Beautiful, beautiful stone carnelian is. Okay, so there's that. Again, I'll always leave an extensive list of gemstones that resonate well with the sign the moon's transiting through in the description. But please do not feel like you have to have those stones. Okay, it really just, you can manifest them into your life, but don't feel like, oh, poor me, because I don't have these stones. That you can write down, I am manifesting more gemstones into my life, into your manifestation journal. Okay, I think I covered everything. Body parts, we went through the sign of Taurus, we went through all the astrological forces at the time of this eclipse. Overall, I'm just going to say, make sure to keep yourselves safe, enjoy this transit safely, and and also happy Halloween coming up here. Okay, you guys, until next time. Oh, if you want to schedule an astrology reading, please visit erinwageastrology.com. You can schedule straight through my website, and I do hope to hear from you, some of you. Until next time, namaste to all of you.